welcome to Tuesday Tips. Normally, or usually, we do these every other week, and I take a couple of features, tools, techniques, and do a little bit deeper dive on them into how to be able to use DataMaster. I've been using DataMaster now for more than 20 years, 25 years in some form or another. And I don't know everything about the program, but I know an awful lot about it. And so I wanted to do just a couple things. The big thing that we're going to handle today, the big thing we're going to talk about is how to use DataMaster to help you with the new changes, the new FHA changes. And so we will get to that. Looks like we've got a couple more joining. Thank you everyone for jumping on. Everyone should be able to be allowed to talk here. Sorry, I don't know why this is set to where everyone is, where you're all muted.
Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
I had to unmute myself.
Okay. Yeah, so so I think everyone, I think I'm giving you the ability to talk. I should probably try and figure out how to change that as a global setting, but I will also watch the chat window as well. If you have a question as we go through here, go ahead and type it up in the chat as well. Super. So a couple of things, those of you that are maybe new to DataMaster Pro, this is what the homepage, what I'll call the homepage, looks like. As always, upper left-hand corner, there's a little 3 menu bars. That's what I refer to, and the developers refer to as the hamburger menu. I'm sure there's some other technical name for it, but it maybe looks like a little bit of a hamburger. Within the hamburger menu, you're going to find global settings that apply to any type of report that you're doing, any file that you're going to create. If you go to the settings here, you can see your general, just some general settings, how photos come in and out. If you want to navigate, for example, I have mine set to market conditions first when I start a file. You can change that and start with the subject or with the comparables, just depending on the workflow, what your portion or assignment may be. If you've got an assistant and you want them to always start with the subject, then you can change this navigation so it's personalized for yourself. I also skip the deed selection in the beginning, and I also don't like it to get the listing history from the MLS in the beginning as well. If you do the listing history, it takes longer to load all of the comparables. It takes longer to load, and so I have that turned off personally, but you can turn it on or off. This also under the market analysis, this is where you would make the determination if you want to count under contract or pending properties as active listings instead of eliminating them from your market analysis. You can also choose the number of months that you're going to analyze. So I have it set to 24 months. I have to bring 24 months worth of listings in from my MLS in order for it to work. But if I brought in 30 months worth, it would still just show 24 months. So you can change that. Here's where you would change the colors of the graphs. There's unlimited number of colors or variations of colors. Also, one other thing you can change here is the polynomial curve. So if you want more of a linear graph, then you would just change this to a 1 instead of a 2. If you get really crazy, 4, 5, 6, you're probably not going to have, it's probably not going to be as meaningful of a graph for you. I believe that we default to the 2 polynomial degree in that case. There's some other formatting. You can truncate some of the verification numbers, how we calculate days on market, how we calculate age, some of those kind of things. If you want it all uppercase, this is where you would find those settings. So, so again, upper left-hand corner, those are going to be general settings for everything that you may need to change or deal with. Today we're gonna start. I'm just gonna start a file. We do this kind of live. I'm gonna call it Tuesday, and today is the 25th. You can type in anything in your file numbering system. I would keep it though very similar to the way that your normal system is. And today we're going to do an FHA assignment. So I'll just put FHA there in the file number. We're going to create this file. Many of you are probably familiar with this. You'll notice how it just started right with market analysis for me. I am going to throw in a subject property. I'm just going to get that subject information. Of course, I could type in the address. I could do a APN number or an MLS number. So I'm just going to type in an MLS number. This happens to be an assignment that I'm currently working on. So I'm not. The data here is going to be live data, just not cleaned up or something for a demo. And so this is the property. It's not very far from where I am, located in Syracuse. We can look at it real quick. It's a rambler. Nothing really very special or unique about it, except that it doesn't have a finished basement, which in my market is kind of unusual for a home that's almost 20 years old. We have the subject in. One thing I also like to point out here is if you can change the effective date. Some of you, there was a big article in Appraisal Buzz not too long ago about doing retrospective appraisal work. DataMaster is very, very useful in doing retrospective work. If that's something that you do on a regular basis, or maybe even you just get an assignment, for a litigation type thing, divorce, and they want to find out what the property was worth, 3 or 4 years ago. You can come in and change the effective date. You just click on the calendar. I actually inspected this property last Thursday, so I'm going to change it to Thursday. But if you wanted to change it, you can just keep clicking backwards. You can go back in time, as far back as you needed to, and you could bring data in. You can set the effective date, and essentially what that does is it changes the way that we look at the status change dates, the age of the comparables, and the subject property. All of those things change and are affected by this effective date. So we'll just keep it at the 20th. And I wanted to do the market analysis first, and then we'll talk about some other tips and tricks that I use DataMaster for. And in order to set this up, I wanted to give everyone just a little bit of background. I know many of you probably joined us today because of the recent changes in FHA, and so I'm gonna really quickly go through the change that I'm going to talk about today. So FHA made this announcement in January. It went into effect last week, Tuesday of last week. There were 64 major changes to the 4000.1. 21 of those relate to appraising. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that, go and get the 4000.1. The very first 10 pages will tell you about all the changes. Highlight the ones that are related to appraising. Of course, I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'm just going to talk about one today, and that's about the market analysis. So many of you may have seen something relating to the fact that we no longer are required to include the 1004 MC in our appraisals for FHA. You may still have a client, a lender, an investor who may want that 1004 MC, and we provide that for you, but it's no longer required. And on page 617 of 4000.1, they added these definitions. So they actually added for the first time definitions of what is an increasing market and what's a declining market according to FHA. So if you're doing this for Fannie or Freddie or somebody else, this may be different, but they really tie the definitions to a change in existing inventory, reduced marketing time, really those key factors in market analysis. The other thing that has not changed is that we need to analyze 12 to 24 months of the preceding the effective date. That's always been in the selling guide. But they did add this paragraph that says that they will not accept an appraisal unless the market trends have been, the market analysis has been done and the trends have been identified by the appraiser. And then this is the big change and the thing that we're going to help you with. So for the first time ever, I've seen a selling guide that actually tells you how it wants you to do the market analysis. So here in the beginning, all of these highlighted paragraphs are brand new. It says the appraiser must analyze the broad market area first. And then in parentheses, it says this is a neighborhood analysis. And then next, you must analyze the specific market or direct sales comparison. And then you have to report how the subject relates to its market area. You must provide support for conclusions regarding housing trends and overall market conditions as reported in the neighborhood section of the appraisal form. So we're going to first start with this broader analysis, maybe all the properties in what you define and delineate as the neighborhood. And then we're going to look at the specific market. What's the market that specifically competes with the subject property? In our case, we have a Rambler that's 20 years old, about 1,400 square feet, 1,400 square foot. And so we're going to focus in on those properties that are very competitive or competing with that direct with the subject property. We also, there's a couple of other things the appraiser must accurately, this is not new, it's been there previously, accurately report the market conditions to determine when the housing trends increase, stable, or decline. And then you must provide a summary comment as to the continuation or the continuance of the current trend. Or if the trend appears to be changing, provide support for all conclusions. And so it's not just enough to just mark the boxes. FHA really wants to understand what you think about the changes that are happening, and you actually need to add a comment in there. You must include a copy if you're using a published source like a Case-Shiller report or an FHFA home calculator report, something like that. You must include a copy of that in your addendum for FHA. You must analyze the absorption rate, show, and at least 2 comparable sales within 90 days prior to the effective date, and at least 2 active listings or pending sales on the sales comparison adjustment grid, in addition to 3 settled sales. If the market is increasing or declining, those have to be included in. Okay, so with that in mind, these are just some of those key things that are important for you to look at, and I'm going to show you where Data Master provides them for you. List to sale price ratio, days on market, absorption ratios, months of housing supply, the number of active listings versus the number of solds. We're going to look at some charts and graphs, the sources and the methodology of the analysis. Those are things that you would also want to provide. Here's some of those charts and graphs. And then I'm going to save this last slide for after we start bringing some data in. So we're going to come back to this in a second. So let's go now to the MLS and kind of talk about how you might go about getting the information that you need to feed to Data Master so that we can do the analysis for you. And I'm going to get a little granular here. I hope that that's okay, that all of you are and this is going to be available. This recording will be available. It may look a little bit different for you and your MLS, because your MLS, may be a flex system or a matrix or a Paragon, but all of them work with the same kind of similar in philosophy. And so this particular property is in Syracuse. We can look at the map. You may put in just your city. You may view a map. Let's zoom out here, and you may delineate that map using a polygon search or a radius search or something like that. You're going to create kind of a boundary of where you're going to search. This is your neighborhood. Okay. So we're going to first define our neighborhood. Second, I want you to select all of the status types. So this might be different than what you're used to, and this will show you the power of Data Master. I want you to get those active, backups, pendings, closed, the withdrawns, the expired, the canceled, everything. And we're going to show you why we want to get all of those. Okay, just like in most MLS systems, it will give you a count. Right now, I have 90 matches. I've already put in some other information. I put in by default, I went in and put in that I want properties that were built in 1990 to 2015. Of course, you decide for your subject property what the appropriate delineations are or relevant characteristics. I'm going to search everything that's got 0.12 to 0.45 acres. I'm going to look for, this is the way that my MLS does it. This might be different for yours, but I'm going to look for properties that are 1,100 square foot to 1,600 square foot on the main floor with no second floor and with at least 1,000 square foot in the basement. Okay, so I've got 90 of those. And my area I drew is a little bit larger than Syracuse City. I don't want some of the other cities in there, but they're going to get there, and I'll show you how I clean those out. I'm going to view those results, and then I'm just going to select all of, back up. I'm not going to view them yet. I'm going to go back in time 2 years. So about 750 days is what I always put in. So I have 175 listings. I'm going to view those results. I'm going to select all of them. And then for most of you, your export button is going to be either on the top or kind of along the bottom of your farm list. I think Matrix and Flex, it's going to be somewhere along the bottom. It doesn't matter to Data Master which export file you use. Many of you will have a single line export. That's fine. My MLS, we actually have a Data Master export button. And so I'm going to now download that file. And I created a little folder for demos. We're just going to call this Tuesday Tip 25 MC, and I already had one, so we're going to call it MC2. So now I have my market condition. These are very specific property sales to my subject. I'm going to go into Data Master to the market analysis, and I'm going to, in the competing tab, we have two tabs here, competing and neighborhood. I'm going to say get comps, and I'm just going to load that file that I just created. It knows where I saved the file, if you save them in the same place every time. And it's bringing in all the information from the MLS. And I'm going to pause here for a minute and kind of show you why we bring in all the statuses, okay? What Data Master can do, because it has access to the back-end real-time database of your MLS on your behalf, we know the status of all of those listings. We know when it changed from active to under contract. And so, for example, if I look here in the 0 to 3 column, and I go down and I look here at number 17, in the 7 to 12 column, it was an active listing. In the 4 to 6, it was an active listing, but now it's sold. So if I go and I find one that was canceled, here's a good one, number 24. It was active 4 to 6 months ago, but it's now canceled. If I had not brought in the canceled and the expired, then when I'm looking at my graphs, and those days on market are going to be inaccurate. They're not going to be correct. I can see this number 24, number 25. I can go over and see what their days on market were. This one was on the market 36 days. This one was on the market 74 days. That's actually now calculated in the median days on market in this graph, where if you hadn't brought it in, there would be a hole and it would inaccurately show you what your days on market are. It would inaccurately display the housing supply. The list to sale price ratios would be incorrect. So it's very important for you to get all the data and then let Data Master as the tool help you to figure out what the current status is and when it was active and under contract. This detail tab is very valuable. I'm going to sort by, like I said before, we had a bunch of extra properties that came in that were not in my market area. My market area is Syracuse. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort by city, and now I'm going to delete those that are not in Clearfield. All I'm doing is highlighting them, hitting the delete key, and I'm deleting them out. We also don't want these ones that were in Layton. That's a different market, different high school, different area, even though it's very close and was in my area within the MLS. And we have a couple here that are in West Point that I'm going to take out as well. Now, as soon as I hit save, all of the graphs, everything are going to be recalculated, and you'll see that we now have 146 properties that are in our that are in this neighborhood analysis or the competing market. I can see my 1004 MC information. All of this is going to be accurate now based on those that are only in Syracuse. It's a lot easier to do it here than it is in my MLS. I grab a little bit broader neighborhood or area than I need. That way, if something was geocoded incorrectly, it still comes in, I don't miss it. And at another time, we'll talk about these paragraphs, these summary paragraphs, and how you can create templates based on data and be able to have those templates written for you. Also, I'm happy to share mine with anyone who would like them. You just need to reach out to me. I will put my email address in the chat box. And if you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to share mine with you. And then you can edit those. You can edit those as needed. So there's my email address. Everyone should be able to see it in the chat if you're interested in getting some of my summaries. So now the next step is once I have delineated my market, what I usually do at this point is I select my comparables. Okay, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to take a few minutes and I'm going to select which comparables I want. And I'm just randomly doing it here. I already did it before. And then I'm going to export those. And that export file, I called it the Tuesday tip comps. Okay, so I've already exported that. I come over and I'm going to throw those comps in and let DataMaster work while I'm doing the rest of it. Here's that comp file. So it's going to bring in 6, 7 comparables. I go back to my MLS, and now I want to bring in all of the properties in this area. So I've got my comps, I've got my competing market, and now what I'm going to do is I still want 2 years. I still want stuff that's in Syracuse, but I don't want to limit by age. I don't want to limit by acreage. I probably don't want maybe condos or something like that, or manufactured homes not on a lot. I want to take out all of the parameters, and I want everything that is in this area. You'll see I have a huge list, 1,700. My MLS will not let me export out 1,700 at one time. It'll limit me to 600. And so the way that I like to do it is I'll just go up to the year built and I'll say, well, give me everything up to 2000 that was year built. Well, that's 356. I can take a few more. So let's try another 5 years. I'm at 625. I'm going to go just under 600. I'm going to view those. I'm going to select them all. So I have to go through each page, select them all, and then export them. And I already did this, so we don't have to take the time today to do that. Once I've selected them all, then we go through the same export routine. Then that's only for that 600. Now I'm going to come back down, and I'm going to go from 2005 to 2000, say 15. Well, we could go a little bit farther. This is an interesting study also. If you've ever wanted to know what the predominant age is within a boundary or within a neighborhood, this is an interesting way to do it. We parse it out already for you. We're going to show you what it is, but this is an interesting way to do it. So there's another 500 or so. I'm going to export that out. Then I'll come back in and do the 2019. And this time I don't want any to be built. So in my market, there may be some that are under contract or that are vapor homes. They haven't been started yet. They're not under construction. They're something that someone thinks they might want to build. So I might take that out. Then I'm going to export those. So it took me 3 or 4 exports. I'm going to go back to DataMaster now. My comps have all come in, but I'm going to go back to the market analysis and to the neighborhood section now. And I'm going to get those files. So it took 3 of them. I'm going to open them up, and it's going to take just a second for them to load. And again, remember, this is everything that's in that area. So I'm going to have some outliers that maybe I want to clean the data up a little bit. Again, it's very easy to do in that detail tab. And Data Master doesn't have a limitation as to the number of listings that you can bring in. So that's the first, that was 400, almost 500. Now I'm going to bring in that next file. And this time, Data Master is going to say, wait a minute, there's already data in there. What do you want me to do? Should we cancel? Should I append, mean add on to what's already in there? Or should I clear out what's in there and replace it? Well, we're going to append. And at this point, Data Master is also looking to make sure we don't have any duplicates. So that if I put in, if I overlapped on years, or if there was the same MLS listing in 2 different export files, it's going to catch that so that we don't have an error in our data, so that the data is clean. So this will take a second, and then I'm going to load that third file. I think we're going to be up to somewhere around 900, 1,000 listings. And remember, FHA wants me to compare these two and say, how does the subject's market and the subject fit within this neighborhood? Is it a lower end home? Is it an upper end home? Is it older than most of the properties in the neighborhood? And the reason they're asking for this is they want to understand the risk that they have in insuring this loan. And this is what they want you to tell them. And frankly, this is what a lot of our clients want from us as appraisers. They have a lot of other information, but they don't know how to understand exactly what the competing market is for the subject property and how it fits into the rest of the properties in the neighborhood or in the area. And that's where you come into play, where you value add to your clients. Well, it's bringing these in. I'm going to jump back over here in a second to the PowerPoint and show you one of the summary graphs that we produce for you. It's taking just a second here. This will take longer time depending on how busy your MLS is, because we're going directly into the MLS, or how busy your internet may be as well. So now that I have about 1,400 properties in, we have about 146 properties in the competing market. These are my ramblers that are very similar to the subject. And here's the neighborhood. I can see on the right hand or the left hand side here is the competing market. This is those 150 listings, and I can see the trend. And as I hover over it, you can see where the prices change. And here on the right hand side is the neighborhood, or that broad area, and we can see kind of what's happening in that market as well. On the right hand side is this annual comparison summary. I'm going to make it a little bit easier for you to see. So what we're telling you here is, remember that list of things that you need to kind of analyze and look at: days on market, list to sale price ratio, price per square foot, median sale price. These are all median numbers. This is the competing market, those ramblers. 13 to 24 months ago, there were 58 sales. In the last 0 to 12 months, there have been 53 sales. Sale price has actually gone from 540 to 530. Price per square foot, though, has gone up a little bit. We don't have a lot of time today. If we were in a class, I would say, why do you think the price per square foot went up and the sale price went down? That might be something that you want to discuss within your addendum, within your market analysis. Days on market went from 6.5 to 50. List to sale price ratio dropped from 101.5 to 99.28. The GLA, as expected, is about the same. The median GLA, 1,400. Age, about the same, 20 years. Lot size, identical. Number of bedrooms, identical. Bathrooms, identical. This is a very competing market to my subject. And then I look at the broad neighborhood and I see, oh, sales also declined a little bit. But sale price actually went up slightly. So did price per square foot. Days on market did not go up as much. It went from 8 to 26. What is that telling us? So these are the questions that we can help you answer now that we've shown you the data. Maybe the Ramblers priced at this particular price point take a little bit longer to sell for whatever reason. List to sale price ratio did decline. GLA is quite a bit different. So this is telling me that my subject property is probably in the lower end. Even though they're newer homes, they're a little bit lower than my median or my typical home in the Syracuse market. 1,850 square foot, a little bit newer properties on a little bit smaller lots, but not as many bedrooms and bathrooms. So very interesting. That chart is right here in Data Master. You can also look again at the details. I'm in the neighborhood section, so here's all 1,300 of those. These columns can be sorted, they can be dragged back and forth. If we wanted to look at an outlier, let's go to the price per square foot graph. I've got an outlier here, $607 a square foot back in March of 2022. Here's some outliers. These are my sales, these diamonds, these red diamonds. Those are the actual comps that are in the comp grid. So we kind of can see where they are. We've got this polynomial curve trend line here. We've also got a linear trend line as to what's happening. I can go into my settings and I could change this to just see the past 6 months if I wanted to do that and say what's been really happening in the last 6 months. But if I wanted to pull that outlier out, it was 607. I would go to the details. I'd go over to list or sold price. These were sold, so sold price per square foot. I double click that so that I have the highest one up top. There it is. Highlight that, hit delete, save, and that's now purged or been taken out of the data. It'll take just a second and it's going to recalculate, and we have a lot of data in right now, and so it may take a second for it to work here. And I noticed that my MLS is getting a little bit busy this time of day. I think a lot of agents are on lunch break and trying to make their next deal. So now if we go to that summary, you'll see that it's not there. This is expanded out. That outlier was taken out, and so we're seeing more detail. The other thing that is here for you to help with FHA will tell you the number of conventional transactions, the number of FHA transactions in your data set, cash. There's cash and VA. You can look at those. We also will break this down for you on a month-over-month basis. So we looked at what was happening yearly, but now you can look and say what was happening last August. If I was making an adjustment from August, say I'm using a comparable from August, the median sale price was $585. Today, or the annual is $562, but those of those 42 sales this month, in the last 30 days, it's 514. That can help me to justify that market adjustment. Here it is on the price per square foot. adjustment. I can see the number of transactions, the days on market, all of those things that I need to. I've got a couple of questions here. Let me hit them. So, are you looking at the subject's positioning? Are you not putting an input in a specific search? Yeah. So when I'm searching my MLS, the first search that I did that gave the competing market, that was all built around my subject. So I already knew what my subject property was. I knew that it was 1,372 square feet up, 1,372 in the basement. I knew that it had a 2-car garage, what the age was, and where it fit within that market. And so when I did my first search, it was market specific. And then it's easier to do market specific first in my MLS and then pull out all the limiting factors to get my broad market area as the last export. They take the longest to do, and so DataMaster, in an efficiency way, DataMaster can be working while I'm doing that. But the idea here is that we have that we're looking at my ramblers, my very specific market, and then how that compares to the overall market. You do have 28, thank you, Tom. Great question, Tom, thank you. You do have 28 different graphs. I look at about 9 of them. I bring 6 of them into my reports. If you want to bring them into the report, you just click the button, include in report. You can also copy these directly, copy them to the clipboard and bring them in individually if you'd like to do that. Unfortunately, there's really no spot for this summary to come in. And so the way that I bring the summary in is I just do a screen capture using, I like Snagit. It's my favorite, but you can do however you want. The reason I like Snagit is it has a lot of extra tools where I can make the chart look a little bit different. And it's a little bit easier for me to pull that chart in and put it into my report. So this is how I bring that in. You can see it just takes a second. I copy that to clipboard and then paste it into an addendum where I'm talking about this, about the changes. So really everything that you need to be able to satisfy what FHA is asking us to do now in our market analysis, all of those things that you need are here within DataMaster. You may have to change a little bit of the way that you search and the way you pull data in or get data out of your MLS and bring it into DataMaster. And in the past, I know a lot of appraisers would never have brought in a canceled or an expired listing, a withdrawn listing into their analysis because it's very difficult in a spreadsheet tool like Excel spreadsheet to really deal with these types of statuses. And most MLSs will not let you export out the off-market date, or they might give you the contract date and the close date, the original list date, but this off-market date you may not be able to get in an export file, and then it would be very difficult to merge all this data up. I was on a call earlier today and somebody asked me, how much time do you think DataMaster saves you in your market analysis if you had to do this without DataMaster? And I actually am very familiar with Excel. I do a lot of pivot tables. I crunch a lot of other things in my Excel spreadsheet. I teach a couple of classes on Excel, and I'm pretty familiar with it. And I still think that DataMaster probably saves me somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour and a half, depending on the complexity of the market, the complexity of the property. If I'm working with a rural property, it may be closer to that hour and 45 minutes of savings. My search time in the MLS is exactly the same. It's once we get it into here and I can start digesting, I can start analyzing and looking at these graphs and how the subject fits in. If I go back to the competing market, I look at that summary. Now this is only Ramblers within you see that the graph is a little bit different, more of a straight line. Here's where my comparables are. Remember, mine does not have a basement finish. And so I would expect the non-basement finish comps to be on the lower end of the trend line. I wouldn't expect them to be up here. I'd expect the market to pay a little less per square foot for those because they don't have as many rooms. They don't have as much finish. So this, I like, this validates my comparable selection within the chart. I may include this in my graph, in my report as well. So one other thing I wanted to show you, sometimes, well, there's two things I'll mention. I was at a trade show not too long ago, and one of our users came up to me, and I really appreciate talking to users when we're in the booth. And he was telling me that he had a question as to how much extra or less might a cash buyer pay for a property versus somebody that is using financing in his particular market. And so what he had done was he had searched his market. He'd gone into his MLS and he had searched by status of all of the cash sales. So he'd gone in and put in cash. And then he created an export file for those. And he put those in the competing market box. And then he put everything else that was not cash in the neighborhood. And as he got his charts together, he could see exactly what the price per square foot difference and the median sale price was between the cash market and the financing market. And actually the cash buyers, they didn't do so well. They paid more. You would think that they would have paid less, but they actually paid more for the properties than those getting conventional or FHA or VA financing. And he opined, or his thought was that it was because they were not getting an appraisal done through a lender to double check that asking price or that negotiated sale price. And so it was interesting that he used the tool in a way that was a little bit different than I had been looking at it. Tony asked the question, which graphs do I bring into my reports? And I'll show you the ones right here. Personally, I like graphs where it shows the sale price and the list price together. So my list price is the blue and the sale price is the red or orange, depending on your monitor and what you're seeing. So I do median sale price and list price. I do median, or that's the neighborhood one, yeah. So list to sale price. So let me back up. Let me say that again. Median sale and list price per square foot. Median sale and list price. I also do the days on market graph. I like that one. I do the list to sale price ratio graph, which is very interesting right now. I do a housing supply graph. And then I also include in the total number of sales versus the total number of listings. So that's another graph that I like to come in. Occasionally, I will bring in my distressed sales graph, but recently it's been 0 for the last 4 or 5 years, and so I quit bringing that in. It stays within Data Master, so if I ever wanted to go back into my files and look at these, they're always there, but I don't bring them into my report. Some other ones that I look at are the average, but I don't bring that into my report. I have those queued up so that I can see if there's a difference, if there's a significant difference. But those are the 6 main ones that I bring in. Thank you, Tony, for that question. Patricia asked, does FHA define how many months you need to be able to mark declining or increasing, and is it 3 months? Great question, Patricia. I wish they would, but they don't. And the reason, in my mind, my reasoning behind it is that they understand that within certain markets there are seasonalities. And so currently, like in my market, we're just coming out of our winter selling season. And just about every winter selling, or every spring, we get a little bit of a bump in sale price, median sale price and list price. Is that really making a change to where I'm going to mark that the market is increasing as an overall trend, or is it just my typical seasonality? And so really, in order to see that, I need to really be looking at a 24-month or at least 6 months, so that I can 18 months, so that I can see some of the seasonality. So here was last December, winter selling trough. There was the trough there, and then we had a really good spring. Of course, rates were still down. And then here it is again, we're starting to see that little bit of a trend coming out of our spring. And so they're not gonna say, well, it's been 3 months declining, so you have to mark declining. But what they want you to do is analyze it and tell them why you think it's stable or increasing or declining, and do you expect that to continue? And I think some of us would say, if the Feds continue to raise interest rates, I think we could continue to see what we're going to be seeing. Those are certainly comments that would be appropriate to put in your report. So great question, Patricia. I hope I answered that. For you. So one other thing I wanted to show you here, when I got diverted and started talking about the cash versus conventional buyers. So one of the things that I found very useful of DataMaster, and please play around with it. Like, this is a tool that you can't break anything. And if you needed to just reload the data, it's easy to reload it. But I came in to my detail sheet and I sorted by address. And I wanted to find some paired sales. I wanted to find some properties that had previously been listed or sold to be able to do a grouped paired sale on a market analysis. And so as I started to scroll down through here, it's pretty easy to find if there's any that have been, let's see. Oh, sorry, I'm on the 0 to 3 months. Go to the 0 to 12 months, which is also all of them, and then do it. I doubt that I would find some in that shorter period. So here I'm sorting by address, and I'm coming down through and looking for addresses that are the same. Here's one, number 12 and number 13. Now, one of them got canceled, and then it was back on the market again. So not exactly what I'm looking for, but you'll see the MLS number is different, because these are different instances where the property was on the market. So it's pretty easy to sort down through and find a couple of paired sales. It's also pretty easy to find if you're looking for something that's sold on the same block as yours. So here's 26 is on the market now. It's an active listing at $530,000, and it sold in September or October of 2021 for $534,000. So they're actually listed now for less than it was 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. That's a lot of great insight. I might actually talk about that and say, this is pretty interesting to me. What's changed with the property? Is it a property where maybe there's some distress that hasn't been addressed yet or hasn't been disclosed yet. But anyway, very simple. Earlier, when the market was really skyrocketing up, it was easy to use DataMaster to come in and find those paired sales. Here's another one right here. And not all of them may work for you and what you're looking for, but it's a lot easier to do it here than it is in your MLS, guaranteed. The MLSs are not built for appraisers, and they won't let you do this kind of analysis. And if you have to put it into an Excel spreadsheet, it's going to take you a lot longer. Number 67 and 68 here, another one canceled, sold. What's been happening? You know, that's an interesting thing for me to look at and try to understand what's happening in the market. Here's one, 80 and 81, sold in December 2021, and then again in February. Of course, that's when the market was still increasing, had a 10% increase. Oh, no, right here's the sale price. Yep, about a 10%, 8.5%, 9% increase in that short period of time. So that's just another way to use the tool. Remember, all we're doing is just really helping you to slice and dice the data that you're bringing in from the MLS. You're always in control of the data. We're not going to reach out and grab something that you're not aware of. We're gonna rely on you to know your market and to be able to give us the data that we need to be able to help you. So we're about out of time. That's about an hour. I really appreciate it. In 2 weeks from now, I'm going to do. We dive deep into DataMaster again. Probably won't do market analysis, but we may do something different. Maybe some customization, some of those kind of things. And if you have any suggestions, please email me. I'm here to help. And thank you very much for being a DataMaster user and for joining us today. Thank you. And this will be available on our YouTube channel. It usually takes a day or so for us to upload it. So, okay, Justin asked, where did we find the annual comparison chart? So you want to go to market analysis, and then you want to be either, if you're going to do the competing market or the neighborhood, either one. If you go over into the summary section and then scroll down to the bottom, you're going to see here is the month over month. The annual is right here on either the 1004 MC page or in the neighborhood. It should be right next to your graphs. That's where you'll find the annual summary comparison chart. Thank you, Justin, for that question as well. Looks like we don't have any other questions. I'm happy to stick around for a few more minutes and answer anything that we may have. I hope again that this has been helpful. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Tony. You guys have a great day. Yeah, Patricia, they're usually by date is where the YouTube, they're on the YouTube. So you can also email me and I'll try and find the link to it. So. Okay. Tony, good question. No, the copy and paste tool that I use, it's called Snagit. I think it's about $60 until I usually don't do the intermediate updates, but it's an aftermarket, and it really it's really powerful. It's worth every bit of the price. You'll see that I use it quite a bit. You can add. I use it for a lot of different things. One of the other things that I like about it is that it keeps track of your library. So I can go back in time and see the days that I did different things. It'll even go back, like I've been using it for a long time, 2016. I can see what I did back in 2016. Just super powerful copy and paste tool called Snagit. Justin, you're absolutely correct. I am so grateful for that comment. Justin said that now he can finally analyze via DataMaster the days on market that their MLS does not do accurately. And Justin, you're 100% correct. Like, the MLS is not built for you as an appraiser, and so they don't understand what you need to do as far as days on market go and our analysis. I see lots of MLSs that will completely ignore different data points that are very important to the market. And a lot of them have policies that actually allow agents to kind of fudge the analytics a little bit. And so I'm glad that you picked that up. Thanks, Justin. I'm going to go ahead and close it down, but all of you have my email address. Please reach out anytime. I'm happy to help, and if I don't know the answer, I'll find it and then we'll get back to you. So thank you. You guys have a fantastic day. Oh, Don, I just saw your question. Can the comps in the comp grid be sorted alphabetically? In the comp grid, the way, and I'll answer this real quick, Don, for you, just hang on there. The way that these come in by default in the comp grid is the most recent sale, so this is an April sale, to the oldest active listing. That's how they sort. Unless you, when you say get comps, if you type in the MLS numbers, then, and just put a comma and a space between them, then they will come in the order in which you type them in, instead of our default order. And so if you have multiple MLSs that you're using and you want MLS numbers from a certain MLS to be first, that start with like an A or an M or whatever, you would type them in individually, and then they would get into the grid in the order in which you type them in. I hope that answered your question. You can always move them around here, and you can also, you don't have to send all of them that you bring in. So for example, I have 7 that I'm bringing in, but if I only want to bring in 6 of them, I just uncheck it, and now there's only 6 properties coming into the report, not all 7. And so often I'll bring in 10, 12 that I'm considering. I'll put them in the order that I want, and then I'll only bring in the comps that I need. The rest of them then are saved in my work file. Thank you. All right, if we don't have any other questions, oh, something in the chat here. When pulling competing neighborhood, Rebecca, when pulling the competing neighborhood, is it more common to pull within 1 mile away only? Actually, that 1 mile radius is no longer in any of the selling guides. So there is not a requirement that the neighborhood be 1 mile away. And I think you're going to see more and more discussion on neighborhood. You'll notice in the FHA selling guide, it says broad market or broad area, getting away from the terminology neighborhood. Really what lending wants us to do, when we look at our map, they want you to say, this is the competing area. This is where my subject competes within, whatever that happens to be within your particular market. And it could be that your market competes here, and then it also competes with this little neighborhood over here. And it also competes with this market over here. And that's completely acceptable. Of course, Data Master can bring all of those in as one single file, or you could bring them in separately. When I'm doing rural properties, when I'm doing a rural assignment, I'll switch over to a kind of a rural area here. This is a market where I work quite often, up in Box Elder County. And you'll see that I may have properties that are competing up to the Idaho border, where it runs along this mountain range, but it doesn't go into the city, the township. And so that might be part of my market. And then it's also going to be over in this area. And so I'm going to delineate this area. And I may have comparables that are 30 or 40 miles away, but for a real estate agent, this home competes exactly the same as with this home. And that's why they're really getting away from all of these predetermined notion that we have to stay within a mile, or we have to stay within the county, or on the right side of the freeway instead of the left side or whatever. It's really up to you to know your market and know where buyers would go for your particular subject, rather than some arbitrary 1 mile. So I hope that answered the question, Rebecca. Data Master can handle all the data you can bring in and help analyze it for you, where this would be very tough in an Excel spreadsheet to do. Thank you guys for stopping by today.